Hey everyone, so welcome to my latest booktube video. At the minute I'm just doing one video a month talking about the books that I've read in that month. I'll probably do some more frequent videos, shorter videos as well in the future, but at the minute we're just sticking with the books of the month that I've read. So I'm going to get cracking because I read 10 books in May. Yeah, this is June, so I read 10 books in May, which I was quite surprised about. I don't set myself a limit in any way whatsoever with books because although it looks like I'm a fast reader, I am a fast reader, but I wouldn't speed read through things. If I'm reading something really beautiful, I tend to reread passages actually if the writing's really lovely. So it just depends how much time I have, and to be honest how good the book is. I think I read faster whenever I'm reading, or I get through more books whenever they're really good because you just want to keep reading them. So anyway, I read 10 books in May, and some of them were pretty thick books, which just goes to show how good they were. But let's get started on the books because, as I say, I'm going to try and keep it short. We'll see how that goes. So I mentioned last month about my new favourite author, Sarah Winman, and I had read her book, her first novel, When God Was a Rabbit, and really loved it. I picked this one up in the charity shop, A Year of Marvellous Ways, and I really loved it as well. Her writing is just really, really poetic and beautiful, and her stories are so... her characters are so well written, the stories are so believable, and just really, they really draw you in. So this is about a woman called Marvellous Ways, who's about 89. She lives by a creek in Cornwall, and it's basically about the story of how a young soldier called Francis Drake washes up, basically literally washes up on her shore after the war, and it's about their two stories and how they sort of weave together and how they help each other, and it sort of looks back on their lives. And I don't want to give too much away about it because her stories are just really, really beautiful and really just something are best discovered yourself without knowing too much about it. The blurb doesn't give too much away either. But yes, it's a really lovely book and I thoroughly recommend it. I've got my book journal here with my star rating that I give every book. So I gave this actually a 4-star rating, and my highest rating being a 5-star. It only gets a 4-star because When God Was a Rabbit, I think, is still my favourite book, but I really, really love this book. So continuing with the Sarah Winman theme, I then just had to go and buy her latest novel, which is Tin Man, and it's a bit shorter. Absolutely adored this book as well, and as I say, I think I gave this a 5-star. On a par, maybe it's a 4.5, because I still think When God Was a Rabbit is my favourite book. But I really love this, and interestingly she writes at the end of When God Was a Rabbit that Tin Man is actually the first book that she wrote, although it's the 3rd book that was actually published. And I think that shows because, it doesn't show, not in a bad way, but it's quite different because the other 2 books, When God Was a Rabbit and A Year of Marvellous Ways, they both have elements of magical realism in them, more so this one, whereas Tin Man doesn't have any magical realism in it. It's about 2 men, basically focuses on the lives of 2 men, Ellis and Michael, who are best friends growing up, and sort of tells you the first half of the book is from Ellis's point of view, the second from Michael's point of view, and we meet Ellis in the present. He's sort of reflecting, he's lost his wife, he's sort of reflecting on the events that led up to that, he's thinking back on his past, he's thinking about Michael and their friendship and their relationship, and it's a really beautiful story. I don't want to give spoilers about this, but in fact the blurb is very short. It just says it begins with 2 boys, Alice and Michael, who are inseparable, and the boys become men, and then Annie walks into their lives and it changes nothing and everything. So it's a very vague blurb. It's a beautiful story though, and I really recommend this as well. Can't go wrong with Sarah Winman in my opinion. So the next book I read was over the bank holiday in May, the first bank holiday, and this is why I thought I wouldn't get through so many books this month or last month, because it was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which is really, really thick. Now, as I say, I don't give myself like reading goals or anything, and just like I'll read whatever I want. I have to admit, I've been wanting to read this for ages, but the thickness had kind of put me off because I thought, but I could read more books. I could read probably, it's the equivalent of 3 or 4 novels, ordinary length novels. So I had put it off, and then I just thought, bank holiday weekend, I'll have lots more time to read, let's do this. So I read this in 3 days. Now, to be fair, it was so good I just kept reading it and I didn't do much else, which is probably why I got through it so quickly, but I really loved it. So it gave this 5-star rating. It's basically about a guy called Theo Decker. So we start off with Theo Decker, who's a young boy, and he's with his mother, lives in New York, and something tragic happens. Well, it's not really a spoiler to tell you that his mother, spoiler alert if you don't want to know, but his mother dies. It tells you this on the blurb. His mother dies, his father is absent, and basically the book tracks his entire life, which if you've read or if you've watched some of my other videos, I've spoken before about William Boyd, who writes quite a lot of his novels focus on one character's whole life, and I really like that because you really get to know a character really well and it really draws you into the story. So I really liked that, the concept of the novel, so that you start with Theo at the very beginning of, when he's a young boy, and it follows him not to the end of his life. Now I have to say it doesn't follow him to the end of his life, but it does, a significant chunk of it anyway. So probably up until about middle age. And basically it's not to give too much away either because so much happens in this book. But the first part, I suppose, starts in New York and what happens to him after he loses his mother. And I don't want to give things away because, again, it's something best discovered by yourself, but the title of the book and how that ties in with everything is really interesting. He sort of eventually gets sucked into this sort of art, what do they say here? It ultimately draws him into the criminal underworld because of something that he keeps or finds at the whenever his mother dies. Basically he gets hold of something and he keeps hold of it for a long time and it causes him a bit of trouble. That's not maybe a very good description, but basically it's just, I really recommend it. 5 stars in my opinion, and it follows his life in New York. Then he moves with his father comes back to get him. The middle section of the book is to do with that and a friendship that he strikes up with a guy called Boris, who is really, really funny. Really love Boris, and it's sort of about their friendship, what happens, and then what brings him back to New York. And yeah, maybe not the best review of it, but I'm just trying to give you, this is my opinion. I really, really liked it, and that's why I read it in 3 days. So pick up The Goldfinch if you haven't read it. I really want to read some more Donna Tartt, definitely. So the next book I read was a poetry book. So this is Island by Stephanie Conn, published by Dura Press, which is a local Irish publisher. And I went to the launch event, or one of the launch events for this book at Ulster University in Coleraine, that Stephanie was doing with Rosemary Jenkinson, who also launched her short story collection that day, which I didn't get because, as usual, I just didn't have enough money on me in the day to buy the 2 books. So anyway, this is a beautiful collection of poetry. Sometimes I do love poetry and I do try to read more of it, but sometimes, you'll know yourself if you read poetry, some of it's more easily read than others, some of it connects with you more, you get more, personally you'll get more from some poetry than you will from other poetry. This I really loved. I really like going to hear poets talk about the work as well because it sets a bit of context to the writing too, so which you don't necessarily need, but I just like hearing the sort of the inspiration behind different poems and, just a bit about the writing process and what inspired some of them. So I really love this collection, and it's inspired by the Copeland Island where Stephanie's family come from, I think. And there's also bits about, she was up in the north coast in Rathlin Island as well, so there's very much a local element up where I live. Obviously I'm very close to Rathlin Island, and it's just really beautiful. So I should have picked out something that I liked to read you. I mean, I'll read you a little bit from one of the poems called The First Lighthouse. Even then, the flaming beacon was old-fashioned. Lensed lamps had been available for years, yet an open fire blazed on top of the whitewashed tower. 3 stories of island quarried stone, picked and carried on the convicts' backs. They built the walls 2 metres thick. These 20 acres never did attract the sun. There was no call for a mirror to catch the light. Alexandria's blue skies were little more than fables. The people here had no time for sea gods who shepherd seals or speak of the past or future. In these parts, that is better left unsaid. This land lies 3 miles from the loch's mouth, knows nothing of the Nile's flat plains or the limestone furrows, reinforced with molten lead. But yes, the fires burned alike. An iron spindle, 20 metres up, revolved beneath the brazier, The hot coals kept burning by the keeper. 1.5 tons on a windy night. The old donkey lugging the black stuff up the hill from the moonlit beach. That's really beautiful, and I really recommend that you pick up this collection to read more of this lovely, lovely poetry. So, on to the next book, which was again quite a thick one, but again one that I bought a few months ago, but I've been meaning to read it for ages, so I thought, well, let's tackle this as well. So this is Arcadia by Ian Pearce. I really love the cover to this as well, and it opens up, this is Arcadia, the land. So basically this one, again I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot going on in it. It's a bit time travel-y, so if you don't like time travel and other worlds, then maybe it's not the book for you. But I'll read you the blurb because it's probably the best description. So, in the basement of a professor's house in Oxford, 15-year-old Rosie goes in search of a missing cat and instead finds herself in a different world. Unterwald is a sun-drenched land of storytellers, prophecies and ritual. But is this world real, and what happens if she decides to stay? Meanwhile, in a sterile laboratory, a rebellious scientist is trying to prove that time does not even exist, with potentially devastating consequences. This is a captivating adventure story with huge heart and dazzling imaginative power. That's the review at the bottom. So basically, I really did like this book. It follows the strands of various characters, as we say, the 15-year-old girl who discovers this whole new world, through a sort of portal into another world in the basement of a professor's flat. We follow the character who actually has created this portal and where she comes from. There's a bit of time travelling going on, there's alternate worlds, alternate realities. Unterwald is actually, bit of a spoiler alert possibly, but Unterwald is the creation of the professor. It's this make-believe world that he's been trying to write. He's aspirations of writing a book, but he has all these notes about the world that he wants to put into his book, but he's never actually got around to writing the book. He probably never will. It's quite nice because it mentions people like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, because it's around the 50s or 60s whenever he's living, writing all his notes, and he was friends with supposedly with C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's quite funny that he's sort of chatting about them and sort of saying about stuff that he likes and doesn't like about their work. So it's really good. There's lots of stuff going on, but I did like it. I think I would give this 4.5 star. Possibly I'm reading too many books at the minute about time. So I've read Matt Haig's How to Stop Time this year, I've read The Timekeepers by Mitch Albom, read this, and I've got another book here which is also to do with time travel, which I read at the end of the month. So it's they're all quite different, but time travel books all have so many different rules, but this one is good. I really did enjoy it, and I would be interested to read some more Ian Pearce books. So it's all about stories within stories, worlds within worlds, and just a really good read. So I recommend you pick that up if you like the sound of it. So the next book I read was The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbow, and this was a book I found in a charity shop. I wasn't quite sure about it. I liked the title. I liked on the back where it says about she's a girl who's been through the care system. She's been through lots of foster homes. She can't really connect with anybody or anything, but she does understand what the language of flowers. So in the Victorian era, each flower has a specific meaning, and the Victorians came up with all these different meanings or symbolisms that they attributed to different flowers. And what's really nice, which I discovered at the end, is that there's actually, Victoria is the main character, and the author has this Victoria's Dictionary of Flowers. So some of the flowers have got multiple meanings, and in the book Victoria and this guy that she meets, who also understands the language of flowers, they both sort of try to agree on which meaning best fits the flower if it has multiple meanings, which most of them do. So this is it's really nice touch that she's done the same in real life and picked out the best meanings for all the flowers. So, lavender, for example, means mistrust. Fern means secrecy. So it's really nice that the flowers that you pick and give to somebody can really carry meaning if you put them together the right way. But anyway, back to the book. The book was brilliant. I had never heard of this author before. I wasn't quite sure when I read the blurb in the back. I thought it was quite interesting. I was a bit worried it might turn into just a big old love story, and I'm not big into my romance books or anything, but it wasn't that at all. I mean, there is a bit of a a strange sort of romance in it, but it's not the main part of the book, so I wouldn't really focus on that. It's just a really beautiful story, really different from a lot of stuff that I've read recently. It was really interesting to read, you know, that from Victoria's point of view, you know, why she was in the care system, what happened to her to go from foster parent to foster parent, and to sort of, yeah, it was just really interesting concept. And then the language of flowers element, where she then gets a job in the flower shop and how that changes her life. It was just really, really good. So we meet Victoria at the beginning whenever she's 18, and she's just obviously an adult, so she's leaving the care system, and then she basically winds up homeless because she's just really not very good at communicating with people or building relationships. And throughout the book, each chapter sort of alternates between the present and the past. Again, although it's not a time travel book, there is the element of sort of time travel in a way for the reader, with a lot of, so again, this is probably why I'm getting a bit fed up with time travel issues in books at the minute, but it's really easy to sort of keep up with. So we sort of find out as we go along what brought her, or what kept her in the foster care system, because at one point it looks as if she had found somewhere really, really perfect to live, somebody that wanted to keep her, and you sort of wonder, how did that all go wrong? So yeah, really brilliant book. Definitely recommend that you pick that up. Hope I'm not rambling too much about this, but that was a really, really nice discovery for me. The next book is this, The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill, which, just take a moment for this beautiful, beautiful cover. And then if you take the dust jacket off, this is what we have inside. Absolutely beautiful. Now, I have to say that you should never judge a book by its cover. We all do. I was totally, when I saw this cover and I saw it was about mermaids, supposedly a feminist retelling of The Little Mermaid, I was just like, yes, I'm buying this book. It's beautiful. And I have to say that, unfortunately, as much as I really, really wanted to like it and really, really thought I would like it, I really, really didn't like it. The only reason, literally, that I'm keeping hold of it is because I really love the cover, but I'm still sort of thinking maybe I should pass it on to somebody else who wants to read it. So, Louise O'Neill, I read her book Almost Love last month, and these only two books of hers I've ever read. I really didn't like Almost Love. It's not usually the sort of thing I would usually read. You can see the other video from my review of that. But I thought this, you know, I read all sorts of books, but I do have a soft spot for, you know, myth and magic and everything, so I thought this would be right up my street. Now, I could probably spend an entire video saying why I don't like it. And it's not, I've nothing against Louise O'Neill. I'm sure she's lovely, and I'm sure her other books, maybe I would like those. But it just, I think to describe it as a feminist retelling of The Little Mermaid is a little bit wrong. Or it gives the wrong idea. I kind of thought it would therefore have a strong feminist character in The Little Mermaid, that there would be sort of positive feminist themes. I don't know. It just wasn't what I expected. I personally got a little bit fed up. Basically every other paragraph seemed to be, you know, telling us about how oppressed or how repressed women are, how, you know, suffocated we are by men, and excuse me while I blow my nose. I don't know. I know what she's trying to do, and I think that's good, and I think it had the potential to be really good, but personally I just get so fed up of, you know, the constant, and maybe that's her point, you know. I know The Little Mermaid here, she grows up in a very, the women are very repressed, is the word I keep going to. It's very, you know, it's not, the men are certainly in charge, it's very old-fashioned. The mermen, you know, the women are just there to look pretty and not to do anything else. They're there to get married off, you know. It's a bit, you know, old, you know, sort of old-fashioned, I guess, even the way it used to be for us in the olden days. But to me it's very black and white. There are literally no redeemable male characters in the book whatsoever. There's one when she gets onto the land, the friend of the guy that is the substitute for the prince in this book. He shows a strand of being nice at one point, but it's not really enough. So basically all of the male characters in this book are awful. The females, even some of the females, like her sisters, and the prince substitute his mother, although she's quite strong and independent. She doesn't come across as very nice either. So again, it's a book that you don't really like any of the characters. I don't even really like the Little Mermaid in it. And she does, at the very end of the book, finally, you know, I suppose she shows some independence and obviously going to the surface and everything. And at the very end, she turns into, I don't want to give a spoiler, so, but at the very end of the book, basically, she says she's going to take revenge on all men and basically rip them to shreds or something. You know, she declares war on men basically, and I don't really think that's a very positive message. I mean, it's just a very strange book, and I didn't like reading it, to be honest. And again, this is just my opinion. If you like this book, tell me and tell me why. But to be honest, I mean, Disney has a lot of, like, I know the original tale of the Little Mermaid is different and Disney Disneyfied everything, but to me, even the Disney version of the Little Mermaid is more of a feminist story than this, because in that she leaves the sea to go to the land. She's more independent. She interacts with characters who are more believable, and at the end of it, you know, she overcomes a lot more, and she does so in a more humane way. Whereas this book is just weird, and I really didn't like it. I should probably have thought, I need to put my thoughts together in this. I don't know that I want to do a full video on it, because I don't want that to look like an attack on the book or anything, but it's, you know, it's a reimagining of the Little Mermaid. It's just not, it just wasn't for me. I just didn't like it, and it just, yeah, let me know what you think if you read that book. But I don't think I'll be reading any more Louise and Neil for a while, because that's two of her books I've read and I really don't like them, so we will see. Moving on to something else now, which was absolutely much better and absolutely brilliant, was The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. I've never read any of John Boyne's books before. I've obviously seen the film of The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, I haven't read it. This is one I saw a lot on the Facebook book club that I'm part of, the Ricochet book club. Lots of people in Ireland were always going on about this book, so I thought, right, I'll pick it up. Again, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, because I don't like this cover really at all, and it's not really the sort of cover that would entice me to pick it up. I only literally picked it up because I'd heard so much about it, and it is absolutely brilliant. It is sort of William Boyd-esque in that, again, it takes the life of the central character, who's called Cyril Avery. He's not a real Avery, let me tell you, which is quite a funny thread throughout the book. He's basically adopted, and it takes his whole life from his birth until right up to the end of his life, which I love. As I said before, you get to really know the character. So it's set in Ireland. It begins with his mother. He's a teenager. She's pregnant and she's cast out of her village in a very horrible way. Obviously the church rules the land, and basically the priest drags her up to the front of the service, in front of all her friends, family, neighbours, in front of the whole village, and basically denounces her in front of everybody, tells her to leave the village. Her family throws her out, and that's basically that. So she goes to Dublin to start a new life. She meets a guy on the bus there, and I don't want to give, again, I'm always wary of giving spoilers, but she basically starts a new life in Dublin, and she knows from the beginning that she has to give the baby up because it's best for the baby. She can't really support it, and she gives birth to Cyril, and he ends up with the Averys, thanks to a little hunchbacked redemptorist nun, which is very important later on in the story to remember that. So basically it's just about Cyril's life, growing up with the Averys, his strange adoptive parents who are nice but quite weird. His adoptive mother is a writer, and she, what is it she says? I've forgotten. She really doesn't like to be, the vulgarity of popularity. She doesn't like it when her books sell. She loves to write, and she thinks that because she's written something, she might as well publish it, because otherwise what's the point? But she doesn't really like doing book readings, or doesn't really like people reading her books and telling her how much they like them. She doesn't like being a best-selling author, which she does become, and she says it's very vulgar to be to be a popular best-selling author, so that's really funny. There's a section here, the vulgarity of popularity, and it's just, she's funny. So it's about Cyril, and then he meets, so it's a while since I've read this, he meets Julian Woodbead. The Heart's Invisible Furies is just a really, really good book, and as I say, it tracks Cyril's life with his adoptive parents, and as he grows up, the relationships that he has, and it's funny, it's hilarious, it's heartbreaking, it's really emotive, and obviously the time in Ireland when he was growing up, and sort of I don't want to give spoilers away, but it's just a really beautiful book, and I swear 5 stars. You really have to read this. It's unputdownable. Definitely recommend it. The 9th book that I read was this one, Fixing Shadows by Susan Barrett. So yeah, Fixing Shadows I didn't really like, and I think I looked her up. I looked up the author online and discovered that actually she originally wrote it for the stage, which kind of explains very much the writing style. It's very directorial. It tells you, for example, now we'll go and see this character and see how they're getting on, that sort of thing. It's a strange book. I mean, maybe another time I would have liked it better. The story is it's set in Victorian London, and it's about all these different characters' lives, how they interweave together. Basically, this countess gives birth to a little boy who dies. Her husband is already dead, so without a son as an heir, she would lose everything, or her brother-in-law would take control of everything. So it just so happens, though, that her the governess gives birth to an illegitimate son on the very same night, conveniently enough, and there's a bit of a swap that goes on, and it's a strange book. I wouldn't really recommend it personally to people, but I liked it enough that I stuck with it to the end, I suppose. I wanted to see how I was going to finish up. So yeah, I think, what star rating did I give it? 2 star is what I wrote at the time. So yeah, lovely cover, but maybe just not. The writing style was really what put me off the most. And the last book that I read then in May was this one, The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North, which is the pen name for Catherine Webb. So again, this is a time travel book, and maybe I did like it better towards the end. I think maybe I'm just a bit sick of time travel books at the minute. So it's basically about this guy called Harry August who keeps getting born into the same life. So basically he lives his life, he dies, and then he gets born again, basically, but he's still Harry August. He still gets born into the same mother, and it's the exact same life, although he can change things that happen in it. So it's interesting. I think I liked it more towards the end of the book because it kind of stuck in the one time zone, and it's all the hopping about that kind of annoys me sometimes. But yeah, it's good. It wasn't as good maybe as I thought it was going to be, but again, maybe that's because I've read too many time travel books recently. So I think the star rating was like 3.5. Yeah, I gave it 3. That's what I wrote down here. So you know, it's a bit, there's always somebody who yeah, it's basically, the world is ending. There's always someone trying to end the world, basically, and I suppose if you're going to keep living your life over and over, somebody's going to want to find out, well, what is the meaning of everything? It's the usual question. So basically, this is, the book sort of talks about obviously the first 15 lives of Harry August, and how in his 15th life he finally sort of helps to stop the world. Well, not, yeah, the world is ending faster, put it that way, because somebody's trying to find out why, what makes them like this, you know, why do they keep getting reborn, what is the meaning of it all. And yeah, it's a good book. I mean, I would recommend that you read it. This is almost the book that I picked for a new book club that I'm going to be hosting at the Giant's Causeway, and I would still be interested to hear what people thought of it. And it's, you know, what would you do if you were reborn into your life, the same life all the time? It's quite an interesting concept, and it is, you know, it's interesting, a different take on things. So yeah, I think I enjoyed this book, but just not my favourite. So my book of the month for May is definitely The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which I absolutely loved, although I also loved The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, so perhaps we have a joint book of the month for May. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!